morning to all the participants to this AICT sponsored short-term training program on artificial intelligence powered solutions for healthcare innovations. In fact, I'm happy to share that we have received more than 230 registrations and more than 100 confirmations for this event. There are particular rules for this event. I would like to share just 2 points. One is that you need to have an attendance of more than 80% for all the sessions, and there will be an exam conducted during the last day. So during that, for that exam, you should score more than 60%. So these are the two criteria that will make the participants eligible for the exam. I take this opportunity to thank our management, Dr. Anand Jacob Burgess, CEO, Hindustan Group of Institution, Director Madam, KCG College of Technology, Dr. Annie Jacob, our Principal Sir, Dr. G. Prabhakaran, and our Associate Dean, Dr. P. Devasundari, our beloved HOD Ma'am, Dr. Kavita Balamurugan. She is the HOD of Electronics and Communication Department, and all the HODs and faculty for their never-ending support to make this event happen. I take this opportunity to thank AICT for sponsoring this event. It is evident that involvement of AI at every step has turned out to be amazing. Through this STTP, we aim to discuss the significance and possible applications of AI in healthcare, which gains more significance during this pandemic time. Now I request my HOD, Department of ECE and Telecommunication, Dr. Kavita Balamurugan, to address the gathering and share a few words about the activities carried out in our department. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, all. Welcome all for the AICTE sponsored 1-week online STTP on AI-powered solutions for healthcare innovations. I welcome the guest of today's morning session, Mr. Arun Ponnuswamy, Computer Vision Research Engineer from Care.ai. To say a few words about our college, KCG College of Technology was founded in 1998 to fulfill the founder chairman Dr. KCG Verghese vision of to make every man a success and no man a failure. The college is accredited by NAAC with A+ grade and all our departments are NBA accredited. The college has established Center of Excellence in Engineering to actively participate in research and development. Electronics and Communication Engineering Department started in 1998 and now we have permanent affiliation with Anna University. We have PG program, ME Communication Systems, and we offer PhD also. Total publications of our department is around 370 publications with 660 citations. ECE department was awarded the Best Industry-Linked Technical Institute in Electronics and Allied Stream by AICTE CII in 2019. We have MOU with reputed organizations such as Data Patterns, Vestel, MedIndia, Bosch, etc. We have 4 industry-supported labs, COE EFI KCG Tech, and COE Yantra, COE in IoT, and COE in medical electronics. We enrich technical skills by continuously imparting initiatives for students by conducting workshops, seminars, and guest lectures. We expose students to real-world problem solving and ensure placements in premier organizations such as CAR Technologies, Virtusa, Embed UR, Data Patterns, etc. Our students actively participate in international as well as national competitions, and notably our students had won first place in Smart India Hackathon consecutively in 2018 and 2019. Our students won second place in IEEE SS12 competitions again consecutively in 2018 and 19 in Sri Lanka and Bangkok. This STTP, AI-powered solutions for healthcare innovations, will be helpful for participants in research and also to give a better knowledge and idea of recent applications of AI in healthcare. Tirukkural says, Tamin Puruvadu Ulagin Purakandu Kamuruvar Katrarindar, meaning the learned will long for more learning and they will see pleasure in learning, and the world also derives pleasure looking at them. Have a pleasant learning experience for a week, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful address, and thank you for your support towards this event. Now I welcome Dr. Arun Ponnaswamy, sir. Let me introduce sir to the participants. Arun Ponnaswamy is a computer vision research engineer at Care.ai. Sir is passionate about image processing, computer vision, and machine learning. Sir has experience working for startups, building real-world computer vision products with extensive hands-on experience in building applications starting from initial research to production deployment. Sir is the author of the open source Python library, CVLib. Sir, we welcome you to share your knowledge to our participants. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Deepa. I'm glad to be here, and I thank HOD ma'am and Dr. Deepa for giving me this opportunity. So let me share my screen. I hope you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is it possible to zoom it, sir? Okay, fine. Now it is clear.
Okay. So I just want to start with just giving a brief idea of what I'll be talking about. So as we all know, so this event is more focused on AI in the healthcare space. So I work for a team called Care.ai, where we mostly autonomous monitoring solutions for healthcare institutions. So just a little bit about me. So I'm just a software engineer, but working on computer vision and machine. So I graduated from PhD from Coimbatore. I blog about computer vision and machine learning at my website called visiongeek.io. So most of my works are around computer vision and machine learning. You can see some of my work on my GitHub, or later in case if you want to reach out, I think you can just email me if you have anything. So with that, so I just want to start with just giving a brief intro about what the product we are building and what the Care.ai team is working on. Let me just play this video.
So the audio is not shared.
Oh, I see.
Yes. Can you share on Click Computer Audio before that, before sharing the video?
Sir, what you can do is you can stop the sharing now. You can stop sharing now. Again, start sharing, and there will be one option called the include computer audio. Just enable that, and then you can share. You can share and play the videos. Just stop sharing now, sir. Just click on share button again, and there will be an
Yeah.
option called include computer audio.
I see the windows to choose from.
So
but,
when you click the share, there will be options called a desktop, window, PowerPoint. Above
yeah,
that,
yeah.
above that there will be something called include computer sound.
Okay, let me see. I don't really see.
Include computer audio or include computer sound, something will be like that, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Avinash Dwivedi, can you mute your video? It is on. Kindly mute your video. Avinash. ID number 14. Thank you, sir. Evan Pawar, kindly mute. All are requested to mute your audio and video. All the participants. All participants are requested to mute your audio and video, please. All the participants are requested to mute the audio and video. Sir Jagwant Pawar, sir, kindly mute your video. While joining itself, all are requested to mute the audio and video.
I couldn't really find out how to include computer
So maybe
sound.
you can just play the video, sir. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. Let me try playing that video in a separate window, or if not, I
Okay. Okay, sir.
from your side, if that helps.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, does the sound audible now?
So not audible. We will
Now,
share it from our end. We'll try sharing it from our end, sir. Will it be fine?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay, sir.
So, you have the link, or shall I share it?
This link, if you can share it, we will. In
Yeah,
the chat
yeah,
box.
I'll
Is the chat
share.
box accessible for
Yeah,
you? Okay.
yes, I'll
Okay.
share.
So if you could share that link in the chat window, then I'll play from my end as well.
Yeah, I've just shared it in the chat.
Just a minute, sir. Can you hear the audio, ma'am? Audio could
So
be
it's
here.
fine, sir, because time is running out. This is fine. Audio is not clear, but this is okay. So Arun sir, please continue from your side because the video projecting, maybe the
Yeah.
audio is not clear. It's not, it's okay.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so like I was saying, so we are trying to build autonomous solution for healthcare. If you let me. So you might have seen some of the recent advancement in computer vision, right? Being able to detect what's going on in the scene and being able to understand really the scene like a human would do that in a split second. Just trying to give that ability or the intelligence to a computer system so that it can predict and even when there is a alert or something that we would like to see, it can do that autonomously. So at the healthcare point of view, if we look at, so this is the main device we are building. So what it does is it has a camera and and a compute device inside. It looks at the scene that is going around and tries to keep track of what's going on. And let's say if you want us or the doctors to alert when something happens, like a patient is falling off, for example. So at hospitals, being able to be there in a in a hospital room all the time, and the nurses or the caregivers cannot be there all the time, right? So if we are able to assist the caregiver with whatever we can with AI, that would be a great value added proposition both in patients and the caregiver. Yes. Another thing I just wanted to show is let me see. So when we were mainly focusing on the initial device that I showcased you, as we all know, COVID hit and many things have changed. So we thought, as a team working towards healthcare, how we can address some of the issues that are faced, right now because of the, COVID. So in that effort, we, kind of shifted our focus, to build mostly, a touchless device where people can come in and, get them screened, with temperature. So this is mostly deployed in hospital institutions where frontline workers are at risk of exposure, right? In a typical way, somebody. Sorry. So in a typical way, somebody would be, standing at the entrance or wherever is.
Sir, you're on mute, sir. We couldn't hear you, sir.
Oh, I see. Can you hear
Yes, sir.
me
Yes,
now?
sir. Yes. We can hear you.
Got it. Okay, I didn't notice that. Okay. So I was saying, apart from this, the earlier device I showed, we just shifted our, focus to help the frontline workers, who are more at risk of exposure, of COVID. So this is the other device we just, started focusing more because we wanted to help the frontline workers during this COVID, right? So this helps people, screen them without any interaction with visitors. So this also gives them a neat view of who is coming in and what are the temperatures. We have a separate dashboard where they can see the people coming in and what the temperatures are taken. You can hear me, right? The audio is on.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so this is just to give a quick view of the products that we are working on in the healthcare space. Let's move to the yeah. So typically, the IoT space started emerging even long back, but the recent advancement in AI is kind of giving another ability or another capability to the whole IoT space. So right now, if you look at the space, right, it is evolving into kind of AIoT. Uh, so this is kind of IoT or AIoT or fan. So this is more of an embedded system with just an internet connection, or even embedded system is kind of a fancy word, but it's just a mini computer compared to our normal personal computer, but with a lot of less resource, and the capability it has is also limited. So this is a normal IoT, right? So adding AI, it kind of brings in the intelligence, at least a fraction of the intelligence that a human has. But some of the restrictions are, and mostly how much power it consumes to make a particular machine learning model well in an embedded system is kind of a challenge on its own. So we are kind of in an era of data and compute, right? So if you look at the amount of data we are generating on the internet, or every click that we make, or every touch we do in our phones is generating data, and it leaves a digital trace, right? So the whole area of AI is kind of coming into mainstream more because of these two things. One is the amount of data available, and the other thing is how much compute power we have in our hand. So AI in general, or computer vision, they have existed long back, like more than 50 years back. But the problem was it was not good enough to deploy into the real world and to give meaningful value to the people. So the main two events that has enable this revolution is compute power and data. Yes. So if you look at healthcare or AI in healthcare space, these are the main use cases or main ways how AI is coming into picture. So one major thing is medical imaging. As you might have seen the news, or AI is able to recognize tumors or other cells in a scan report, or being able to do better detection and analysis than a human radiologist. So this is kind of the most shown use case in in the mainstream media. And the other one is drug discovery, meaning creating cures and medicines for diseases. So generally, the process behind the scenes, it involves a lot of experiments and computational models and simulations, right? So there, AI is really helping to speed up, to really assist the scientists who are in discovering diseases, or even just understanding the viruses, like how COVID is being studied. So the other thing is monitoring, which is what we are mostly working on. So being able to monitor autonomously and alert when something happens is another value proposition that will benefit both the hospital institutions and patients. And the other thing is it's not like well known text-based or voice-based assistance, right? So when you want to talk to a chatbot or a voice assistant, instead of a general assistant, maybe you are looking for some medical advice or just medical related information, you can ask or type it out, but the AI system should be able to understand what you're really asking, and it should be able to come up with an answer that is reasonable. And the other area is processing this medical files, right? If you look at currently, even some of the humans are looking into these files and being able to assign medical codes. These are more, so being able to understand the medical files and process automatically is again the AI is, or computer vision is coming in, and combining this automated processing and the text or voice assistance. This can also open up doors in terms of personalized therapy, depending on what the patient is feeling. So this is just a high level overview of how AI is helping in the healthcare space. So I just want to give a quick intuition of how this is all happening, how so in a typical way, when we are writing programming, right, we will be writing rules, right? We take in an input, and we eventually want a processed output. But how that processing is happens is mostly we write strict rules and how
Sir, audio is breaking.
The process.
Okay.
It's not, but we we process a lot of visual and audio input and other sensory input. So just to understand a single scene, there is a lot of processing that that goes in that we generally are not aware of, or we just take it for granted, what our human brain does. But for a computer to be able to do that, let's say if you are writing rules for just recognizing an object. For example, let's say there's a cat in the picture. How do you make a computer recognize without any help from us, right? Just from a computer program. So, so typical way, if you are writing rules, if else conditions or loops. So let's say the images is pixel values, right? They are still numbers. It's not really hard coded rules. If you look, okay, this pixel value is this number, then this. If this and that when it comes to this high level application. So earlier days we didn't have that kind of
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir. We couldn't hear properly.
or again the compute power. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. It's fine now. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, I'm having your PPT. Shall I project it from my end, sir, so that you can play the video also?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'll just project from my end, sir. Screen is visible, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. If you could tell me to change the slide, I'll change it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Just go back to the slide, the previous one.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the real change that has happened, in the way we program is instead of writing, handwritten rules, now we, show it to the, the algorithm. Hey, this is what we want, and this is what it looks like. Similar to a way like a human, you show them data, or you just show them, right, this is what an object or the cat looks like. Initially it might make mistakes, but as you show more data, and as you correct them through the iterative process, it gets better. So the way it has changed is, instead of writing rules, we give them the data. At the end, we expect the algorithm to learn the rules, right? What an object looks like, or how it just needs to learn the representation of whatever the mapping between the input and the expected output. So this is just give you an idea of how machine learning has changed the landscape. Yeah, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Just one quick thing. In case if you have any questions, you can just feel free to stop me anywhere. We can discuss it. So this is all well and good, but in the real world, where these AI systems are actually deployed. So if we look at one major area is cloud, where the input goes back to the server. So a lot of the things on the website or on our mobile phone, when we actually do some processing, most of the time the input goes back to the server through an API call or something. So it gets processed there, and then it comes back with the result for us. So this is a more general way we might have aware of. The second area is edge devices, right? Where all the processing happens on the device without really going back to the server, and it doesn't really need to be connected to the internet, or even if it is connected to the internet, not all of the data is sent over to the server. Maybe just the finished processing, or just the alerts, like I have shown, just the alerts goes into internet, through an API call. So another area is still on mobile, but instead of going back, we can do on device machine learning inferences. Nowadays even some of the services on Google still works offline on the device. Like when you, for example, when you type a word, it on the keyboard, it kind of predicts what would be the next word you might type. So earlier this might have been kind of strict handwritten rule kind of for looking into a kind of dictionary and then trying to predict. But now this kind of moving into learning the pattern of how you type and just trying to understand and use machine learning to give better predictions. They're even trying to do it on device, even if it is online or offline, it would still work. So another kind of new area is developing is in-browser inference. So let's say if you go to your website, for example, some processing like face detection or anything, or hand gesture detection, they don't really need to go again back to the server. The ability to run this machine learning models in browser, right? In your machine using your machine's compute power is just another area that is coming up using JavaScript and other techniques. So this is kind of a broad overview of in the real world where machine learning or AI is making interactions with people. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So if you look at the main difference between running something on the cloud or running on an edge device like an embedded system. One second. So as I said, on the cloud, it goes to the backend through an API call over the internet. on the edge devices, everything happens on the device. So on cloud, the restrictions are not that strict compared to an edge device, because you don't have to rely on the phone, or somebody's browser to do the processing. For example, the image can go back to the server, and on the server you might have larger processing power like GPU or other things. So one thing is there is possible latency because it has to go to the server and get processed and come back. And again, it is subjective to the internet connectivity, right? It has to be connected for it to work. On the other side, edge devices are more known for being able to process these things in real time. For many cases like processing CCTV footage or anything that has to happen like in real time, or at the door if you have a like face recognition system or something, it has to be more quick and real time. So this brings in an advantage with some challenges, right? So this can work offline, not needed to be connected all the time, and the actual data doesn't really leave the device; it just happens there. So in this view, I mean, there are some privacy or security issues on the cloud side, right? Whatever the data that we are sending is basically goes back to somebody's server or somebody's machine. So there is concern that sensitive data is going back, and of course the security challenges. What if that server gets compromised or being used for other purposes? On the edge, I mean, privacy wise, the data might not leave the device, but that also has some security challenges, meaning how much of general security complaints that can be done on an edge device with very less compute. And even if somebody gets access to the device, what happens? So security wise, even on edge device, there are some challenges, but edge, privacy concerns. Next slide, please. So just expanding on the challenges in edge computing, right? So this is again more visible to us in our team, since we work on this edge device, right? We process all the frames and most of the information on device. So when we think about building an AI system on edge devices and building a model, so apart from building or creating a machine learning model that is capable of doing something, there is a whole other area that we need to be thinking about. On the device that we have on hand, like how many CPU cores that it has, and what frequency the maximum frequency the CPU can operate, and how much memory it has, and how much disk space. So because most of the time these AI systems are runs in the cloud where these are not a constraint, and even people don't really look at how heavy the models is. So these things becomes very important when we are running this on edge. So even normal CPU might not be enough for more heavy neural network processing, and we have to think about what are the accelerators that we can get. So GPUs are really good at doing this task, but they come at a cost, right? On an edge device, how many GPU cores or how much capabilities, and even the newer ones like TPU or NVIDIA is coming with deep learning accelerators and everything. So even they have some limitations. So they even consume more power, and if you're running a machine learning model like 24/7, then the device gets heated, and once you deploy this device to a location, and how do you deploy newer version of the model to that device, and how do you access the device remotely, and how do you monitor the health of the device, how it is doing. So these are kind of general challenges in deploying AI onto the edge. Next slide, please. So in particular, computer vision on the edge, as we are building from the beginning, for example, the neural network architecture that we select, and if this has to run in real time, how many frames per second it can process. And even after developing all of this, we still have to optimize the model. After the model is ready, we still have to go into the another phase of model optimization that is kind of specific to the hardware architecture. So some of the recent advances in model optimization, like TensorFlow coming in with TensorFlow Lite and TensorRT from NVIDIA. So they are kind of helping optimizing the model to run in edge devices with more efficiently. So mostly for prototyping or experimenting, Python is mostly used. But generally people have an idea like Python or other recent languages kind of taken over, or C++ is not really used that much. But that's not really the case, because even if Python comes in with more convenience, but it comes at a cost, right? So when we are looking for really high performance, we still prefer using C or C++ on edge devices.
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
Sir, no audio, sir.
Hello.
Sir, voice breaking, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, now it's audible, sir. Yes.
Okay. Let me check my internet connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's fine.
Right. Maybe processing this frames, so that if in a sequential process things has to happen one by one, right? That might create some lag. And even we have to think about high level algorithmic optimization. Do we really need to do something at a particular point? So this is all kind of doing all the best we can do to get a better performance on an edge device. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the recent advancement in devices, better GPUs are coming in, almost, every 6 months. NVIDIA is announcing, better GPUs, and even they are coming up with AI specific accelerators. For example, Google has its own device. Yeah, if you can play that video, yeah.
Sir, can't hear the sound from video.
Okay, then just let it play. That's not an issue. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So this is just the number of devices that NVIDIA announced just this last fall. So this is just to give you an idea of the advances that is happening in the compute space. So even if you look at NVIDIA, they used to be kind of gaming hardware company, but the way the GPUs are used in deep learning has totally changed their position. Right now they are kind of trying to be the AI computing company. So mostly because this GPU processing is most suited for this neural network processing for mostly because of the parallel processing it brings in and the speed it comes with. So if you look at the edge devices, generally we have seen like Raspberry Pi or Arduino. So they are not really that much capable of running this neural network, power hungry models. Even like Raspberry Pi in the, I think, last model, they upgraded to 4 GB RAM, but still just GPUs alone is not really that helpful. So kind of Google came up with this Coral Edge CPU, names for the tensor processing unit, and NVIDIA came up with NVIDIA Jetson range of devices. So this is just to give you an idea of what's happening in the industry on the computing space. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So even on the algorithmic side, there are some advances that is happening just to facilitate this lightweight devices, and even where the training data is not really available and on like large scale. So in general, for image recognition tasks, right? For example, recognizing objects like car or other objects, it's easy to get a large amount of data, for training machine learning models. But when it comes to healthcare, just to get access to the data, right? For example, if you're training to detect a tumor on an MRI scan, you don't really have a lot of open source data to train on, right? They are really sensitive data. Or even if you partner with an institution to get data, it's still not really that much large scale amount of data, right? So the useful algorithms that we use for recognizing other images and objects are not really well suited for with training a model with very less data. So that's where the we still have to do many things in terms of creating new algorithms like few shot learning and more like CNN convolutional neural network architecture that are focused mainly on this tiny lightweight architectures. And even recent techniques like WebAssembly is kind of helping to run normal C++ code on a browser. And even just deploying these ML models on mobile has been a difficult process, but I think the integration is kind of becoming better for mobile deployment. Can you just play that video?
So just a minute, let me just check it, sir. Audio is not played. I'll just check a few minutes. Just a minute, sir.
Yeah.
Inside every cell of your body,
Sir, audio could be heard now, sir.
Yeah, now we can hear.
billions
That's
of
great.
tiny machines are hard at work. They carry oxygen in your blood, let your eyes detect light, and even make your muscles move. These machines are proteins, and they underpin every biological process in every living thing. Each protein has an intricate 3D shape that defines what it does and how it works. We know of over 200 million proteins and counting, but we only know the exact 3D shapes of a fraction of these. Unravel a protein, and you'll see it's like a string of beads made up of 20 different types of amino acids. Interactions between these amino acids make the protein fold, as it finds its shape out of almost limitless possibilities. For decades, a community of scientists have been working on a way to figure out a protein's shape just from its string of amino acids. This is a major challenge in our understanding of biology. So we created an AI system to solve this problem called AlphaFold. It's trained on the sequences and structures of about 100,000 proteins, painstakingly mapped out by scientists around the world. Today, it can accurately predict a protein shape just from its sequence of amino acids. AlphaFold's predictions could enable progress in all sorts of areas. Imagine a future where we can understand diseases more quickly and develop drugs to fight them, or one where we could use enzymes to break down plastic waste, or even to capture carbon from the atmosphere, all with the help of proteins. There's a lot more work to be done, but unlocking the shapes of these building blocks could help scientists better understand the natural world, and perhaps expand our knowledge of life itself.
So this is kind of a a recent breakthrough that happened. You might have seen them in the news or something just a few weeks back. So the company called DeepMind, right? They built an AI system to start to solve this problem of protein folding. So so this is kind of a long-standing problem in biology, almost like more than 50 years.
Inside every cell of your body,
Just being able to predict and understand the actual proteins that is going inside our human body has been proved to be really challenging. But now with with the help of an AI system trained on known proteins, the AlphaFold team, they are able to predict the protein shape, but more than like 90% accuracy. So I think this is kind of will help a lot in terms of even like drug discovery and understanding diseases, viruses like COVID, right? This will fundamentally unlock many possibilities. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this coming from around the world, from researchers and organizations, right, through open source tools and publishing their research freely, and making the code or making many resources available online. So this has been really helpful for anyone who is who has been like building a solution to a problem. Even we use and rely on some of these open source tools like TensorFlow and PyTorch. Or, right now, like anyone who has access to an internet connection can access most of these resources. Yeah. Can you go to the next slide, please? So in healthcare, there is still a lot of concerns in giving access to the data, and there is a lot of regulations that is there to access the data, right? For example, the particular device that we are building will be placed in every rooms in the hospital or kind of nursing home. So the data or the video stream that we are getting in should not go outside to backend server or something. So we kind of have to process all of those data on the device, and there is a lot of regulatory complaints. So just to address these issues, people are still working on what are the ways we can create better AI system, but also like addressing this data and privacy issues. So one kind of example is there's new area of research into like federated learning. So this is a little bit different approach from in a normal supervised learning models. Like usually you gather data and then you train it on a server, or I mean you do the training and the experiments, everything on the company side, and then you take the trained model and deploy it to the production. So but if you don't have access to the data, the whole the training process just stops. So federated learning is kind of instead of taking or collecting all the data and bringing to the training model, what if we take the training models to the training data where they are located. For example, let's say each hospital has their own data. Instead of taking all the data, if we bring the a model that is that can train on that particular data from that institution, that and it can stay in that institution. Once this kind of model is trained at multiple places, what if we can bring those trained models together instead of the data, and from the trained this tiny models, if we can create a global model that can learn and consolidate what these tiny models have learned, without really knowing the each individual personal data behind each tiny model. So this is kind of another approach to address this issue that we have in healthcare. And even
Sir, your voice is breaking, sir.
the training, how do we is it better now?
Oh, yes, sir. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that, just a connectivity issue. So I was saying about this crowdsourcing, being able to get access to this medical data, but without really identifying the personal information. That is still kind of an ongoing area of development and research. Being able to build these AI systems with less data. And another area is kind of explainability. So even if we successfully train a model and it kind of predicts or recognizes whatever we want it to do, but how do we actually explain the predictions or the decisions that the model is taking? If something goes wrong or a questionable decision is taken by a system, how do we explain the behavior or why the AI system did what it did? So that is kind of another area people are trying to put efforts into. For example, a machine learning model trained at the company Apple, right, for creating credit systems. It assigned more credit data for a particular kind of demography of people and than the other. So if you look at the predictions and why the AI system has been making those decisions, it's kind of difficult to go back and explain what made it in a way that the model behaved. So that is again kind of implicit bias kind of coded into the model through the data that we use for training. For example, the data has to be very diverse. The training data has to include as many diverse scenarios as possible, so that it doesn't get concentrated on one type of data and it just leans on that side. And even other ethical choices, right? How these models are being used in in what scenario, and just assuring that it doesn't really make or hurt any human values. For example, I recently came across a team that is trying to detect heart rate and other medical information just from the photo of a person, without really other sensor details. How accurate that could be, and if you rely on that data to make other decisions, how reliable it is. So those kind of ethical questions and explainability is a lot more important when it comes to healthcare. Yep. Can you go to the next slide, please? I actually have a few videos on this. Yeah, let's go one by one. The first one. Yeah. Just double click that video. I think it should. So this is just an autonomous system that a team at Zoox has recently unveiled, and they were able to run this custom designed vehicle that can go and drive autonomously and bring people to places. So this is just if you look at AI in the healthcare space, or in general, if we are actually looking into creating human well-being, and safety through AI, then I think this still kind of related to creating health or well-being to humans, right? Just being able to avoid the accidents and the injuries and deaths that causes because of the deaths on the road is still brings a great value. So another thing is, for example, if you look at this hand, right, this robotic hand, for a long time, the being able to make these maneuvers, as sophisticated as a human being, has really been challenging into robotics. Recently, a team at OpenAI, they were able to train, kind of robotic hand that can almost or even better than a human hand that can handle objects. So we kind of as seeing the robotics are like very stiff and not really good at doing this very subtle operations, right? This kind of again opens up another world into even healthcare as well. So even right now, there are some robotic instruments that are helping in doing surgeries and assisting doctors. I think this will even go further into handling patients or other aspects of healthcare. Yeah, can you play the next video?
Robots are now helping healthcare workers at Brigham and Women's.
So this kind of another example where robotics is evolving more into human-like, or even some of the things that humans cannot do. So so this kind of will help, for example, where it is really hazardous for humans to go into, or even very difficult situation where a human interaction might put them at risk, we can let a robot go into the, for example, if a gas leak has happened, instead of going a human into that space and inspecting it, a robot can go in and help. So I mean, this is not completely new. We have had robots that can kind of help in this scenario, but mostly they were manually operated and manually controlled. Only recently, like with the help of AI, we can put some intelligence into these robots, and they can detect and go around themselves without really waiting for commands from a human for every single turn and move. Yeah, can you play it? So this is kind of another robot that is from the same team at Boston Dynamics. So this kind of totally breaks how robots are seen and perceived. Uh, Generally, the robots are not really this much flexible and human-like in terms of doing this action and just being able to hold things the way human does. Has been really challenging for a long time. I mean, other than science fiction movies, in reality, it has been really challenging. These advancements are has a lot of hope, and uh, advantages for for a better tomorrow. Meaning not just in terms of medical or healthcare analysis, but just creating well-being for and safety for humans in a broader sense. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So this is kind of I want to finish it with a hope and a better not long term future, but in the near future, where the robots or in general AI systems can help us in terms of building a better life and better wellness and safety, uh, even in the medical space and even in general as well. Yeah, with that, I'm kind of uh, finishing the presentation. Can you just go to the next slide? Yeah, I think we can have some open forum for Q&A and discuss anything that you might have on your mind.
Any question and answers, please ask participant side.
Yeah, just any questions you
Yes.
have on your.
Sir, from my side, you were telling about Jetson Nano Edge device. What will be the cost
Yeah.
for that, sir?
So Jetson Nano generally costs like $99. Even they released a recent one at lower cost at I think $59 or something. So in India it should be like less than like 5,000 or something.
So will it be better than Raspberry or Arduino to do projects based on AI?
Yeah. So mostly, Raspberry Pi has been the go-to device for projects so far, right? So now it's kind of being Jetson Nano is kind of the Raspberry Pi for AI, because the GPU it has for the neural network processing and the whole range of even software optimization that NVIDIA is coming up with.
Okay.
So Jetson Nano will be a good starting device for any
Okay.
AI processing.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Participants, any other questions from your side?
And even NVIDIA has other range of devices like NVIDIA, I think
Okay, sir.
Jetson, Xavier. NX is kind of has the best compute in terms of edge device that comes at I think $399 or something. But that's
Okay.
the most powerful that can handle more parallel live stream, similar to how the self-driving cars are processing the data. And even similar to Jetson Nano, Google also came up with Coral Edge TPUs. So those two will be a consideration for starting point.
Okay, sir. So thank you for the good introduction on the first day session. Thank you so much, sir, for spending your time and sharing your knowledge to the participants. Now I request the participants, you can leave and we can join back at 2 o'clock. The afternoon session will be handled by Mr. Swapnil Srivastava from IBM. See you again at 2 p.m.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Participants can join back at the feedback link as well as the attendance for the morning session will be shared in the afternoon session. Okay. So thank you all of you. We'll meet again at 2 p.m.